Welcome back! In the last video we talked about cameras, so today we're going to talk about lenses. And again, this is not going to be an in-depth review, we're just going to quickly go through some of the options so you know what to look for and what's available. Okay, let's go lens shopping. A typical FPV camera, like the DJI FPV system or a RunCam analog camera, has a super wide angle of view, around 150 degrees. Not coincidentally, 150 degrees is about the same angle of view as a GoPro camera. This ultra-wide angle of view works really well for FPV because it gives you a sense of context and helps you orient yourself in the environment as you're flying through the world at warp speed. Conversely, most cinema camera lenses don't have anywhere near that wide an angle of view. For example, a standard 50mm lens that you might use on a full-frame DSLR or mirrorless camera has about a 47-degree angle of view, which is great for street photography, but not so much for FPV. To give you a sense of what that looks like, here's some FPV footage that was shot with an ultra-wide 7.5mm lens on a Blackmagic Pocket 4K camera, which gives a 111-degree angle of view. Now, here's the same flight with the same camera, but now with a 50mm lens. That 47-degree angle of view is just way too tight and it looks ridiculous. And that is why when we talk about cinelifter lenses, we're mostly talking about ultra-wide-angle lenses. I'm not saying you should only ever use ultra-wide lenses, and there are probably some interesting ways that longer lenses could be used on these setups, but if you're building a cinelifter, then the first lens you buy should probably be an ultra-wide. There's a free web-based tool over at pointsandfocus.com that will calculate the angle of view for a given lens and camera combination. You just enter your camera's sensor size and the focal length of the lens, and it will tell you the angle of view. So, for example, I can see that on my Blackmagic Pocket 4K camera, which has a micro four thirds sensor, my Laowa 7.5mm lens gives me a 111-degree diagonal angle of view. I'll put a link in the description so that you can use this calculator and take some of the guesswork out of your lens choice. So other than wanting a very wide-angle lens, we also probably want to avoid any lens that has optical image stabilization, or OIS, for the same reason that we want to avoid IBIS cameras. The stabilizer mechanism could jiggle around during flight and ruin our footage. I would also try to avoid zoom lenses if you can, since they tend to be heavier and more expensive than primes, and I'm not a big fan of fisheye lens designs because of the intense distortion and also because it's a huge pain to mount filters on fisheye lenses. So now that we know what we're looking for, let's see what wide-angle lenses are available for the different cameras that we talked about in the last video. If you're using any of the micro four thirds cameras, like the Blackmagic Pocket 4K, the Panasonic GH5S or BGH1, or the smaller Z cams like the E2 M4, then this is a pretty easy choice. The Laowa 7.5mm f2 MFT lens is, according to the manufacturer, the widest rectilinear lens available for micro four thirds cameras, and it's pretty ideal for our purposes. It's sharp, it's small, it's light, and it's pretty affordable at $500. I went for the Laowa 7.5mm f2 on the Blackmagic 4K, and I'm pretty happy with this combination. If anything, I just wish it were a little bit wider. The Laowa 7.5mm MFT costs $500 and weighs in at a very petite 150 grams. For the Fuji X-T3, I would start with the Laowa 9mm f2.8 Zero-D in Fuji X mount. It'll give you a nice wide 113-degree angle of view on the X-T3's APS-C sensor, and like the other Laowa lenses, it's small, it's light, and it's sharp. The Laowa 9mm f2.8 costs $500 and weighs 215 grams. The Blackmagic Pocket 6K has a Canon EF mount, so you can use any Canon EF-S lens as well as full-frame Canon EF glass with the Blackmagic Pocket 6K. The Canon EF mount has been around since 1987, so there are a ton of lenses in this mount. But unfortunately, there really doesn't seem to be a perfect, lightweight, ultra-wide cinelifter lens for this camera. I guess I would have to go with the Canon EF-S 10-22mm lens, even though it's a zoom. This is one of the widest lenses I could find for this camera that isn't a fisheye and doesn't have OIS. The Canon EF-S 10-22mm costs $650 and weighs a hefty 385 grams. The last camera on our list was the RED Komodo, which uses Canon's new RF mount. If I had a Komodo, the first lens I'd buy is the Laowa 9mm f5.6 FF-RL lens. I actually don't see this lens currently available in RF mount, but I've heard that the RF mount version has already been spotted in the wild, so it should be available very soon. This is the widest lens you can get for this camera, so that's the first one I'd get. The Laowa 9mm FF-RL lens is also available in Leica LMount, so if you're using the Sigma FP, then you'll probably want the LMount version of this lens. I know I talked some trash about the Sigma FP in the last video, but I'm actually taking another look at this one because a 9mm lens on a full-frame sensor would give a whopping 135-degree angle of view, the widest of any camera and lens combo we've looked at, and that might be enough for me to look past the FP's many, many flaws. The Laowa 9mm FF-RL costs $800 and weighs in at 350 grams. Okay. To summarize, if you're using any micro four thirds camera, just get the Laowa 7.5mm MFT lens. For the Fuji X-T3, I like the Laowa 9mm f2.8 Zero-D, and for the Blackmagic Pocket 6K, you can try the Canon EFS 10-20mm. For the RED Komodo or Sigma FP, I would definitely look at the Laowa 9mm FF-RL. I swear, I don't work for Laowa, I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that right, they just happen to make a lot of ultra-wide lenses that are perfect for cinelifters. But that's going to be it for this video. What do you think? Did I leave out any good lenses? Let me know in the comments. In the next video, we're finally going to talk about drones, so please subscribe and ring the bell so you know as soon as that video is available to watch. Cheers!